Imagine spending, like, 3 whole months traveling the globe just to source the exact right fabric for a superhero cape.
Just for a piece of fabric.
Right. 3 months searching worldwide, literally just so the material would ripple perfectly during the stunt choreography.
It's an almost obsessive level of microscopic care.
You know, it really is. But then that very same movie somehow managed to lose roughly $200 million in just 32 days.
Yeah. It's staggering.
I mean, how does a project with that much intense, granular passion fail on such a massive macroscopic scale?
Well, that's kind of the defining paradox of modern Hollywood, right? We assume that because hundreds of millions of dollars are spent, every single variable is controlled.
Right, like it's a perfect science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But underneath that shiny, expensive veneer, these massive blockbusters are often wildly unpredictable, fragile things.
And if you're listening to this right now, you are probably wondering the exact same thing we were, which is, how did the biggest pop culture event of the summer crash so fast?
Yeah, crash and burn.
Because today is July 28th, 2026. That marks exactly 32 days since DC Studios' Supergirl hit theaters.
32 days?
And as of this morning, it is already dropping on digital platforms after an absolutely agonizing run at the box office.
I mean, 32 days from the silver screen to your living room. That is a historically abbreviated theatrical window for a tentpole release of this size.
It's basically a white flag.
It really is. It signals a complete structural collapse in the studio's distribution strategy.
So to figure out how we actually got here, we're pulling from a huge stack of sources for today's deep dive.
We've got a lot to get through.
Oh, yeah. We have a glowing, really detailed on-set report from Collider, a mixed to positive review of the actual film, and some behind-the-scenes trade reports from comicbook.com.
And those detail some pretty intense clashes over the director's cut.
Right. Plus, we're looking at some brutal box office postmortems and a highly critical, heavily debated Reddit thread from diehard DC fans.
So we have the full spectrum here.
We really do. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the original vision. Because before the financial collapse, this movie was supposed to be something truly special.
It was. The initial pitch was incredibly ambitious. Director Craig Gillespie was heavily inspired by the classic Western film True Grit.
Oh.
Yeah, and Tom King's acclaimed comic book run, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. He essentially pitched a gritty sci-fi space Western.
Which is such a massive tonal departure from what we saw last year with David Corenswet's Superman.
Oh, completely.
Because that movie was bright, sunny, full of optimism, but Gillespie wanted Kara Zor-El's story to be fundamentally different.
Right, where Clark Kent was raised on a cozy, safe Kansas farm.
Millie Alcock's Kara is deeply cynical. She's messy.
Yeah, she is actively dealing with profound, crippling trauma from physically watching her entire civilization burn and die.
And to convey that grounded, messy reality, the production team made a pretty radical choice for a modern comic book movie, didn't they?
They really did.
Yeah.
They realized they couldn't just throw the actors into a sterile room painted green and, fix it in post-production.
Right.
So they shot heavily, practically. They went on location in Iceland for these sweeping, desolate landscapes.
Which looked gorgeous, by the way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And they utilized the massive stages at Leavesden in the UK to physically build these decaying Greco-Roman inspired sets that represented the dying days of Krypton.
The details from that Collider set visit are just fascinating. Like, Kara travels the galaxy in a space RV.
I love that RV.
It's so cool. It was physically modeled after Mel Gibson's messy, cluttered caravan in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, the interior is covered in vinyl records and old Polaroids.
And she spends the movie wearing a vintage graphic tee of Debbie Harry from the band Blondie underneath her coat.
It adds so much character.
It does. And her ship isn't some sleek CGI render they just added later. They built a massive physical wormhole bus on hydraulics.
And it actually rattled the actors around during the scenes.
That is so cool. And that tangible craftsmanship extended to every corner of the production. I mean, talk about Krypto the Superdog.
Oh, this is my favorite part. Krypto wasn't just pixels tracked by a tennis ball on a stick.
No.
The special effects team practically built a breathing, tail-wagging animatronic dog using an IKEA rug as the base material.
An IKEA rug. I mean, that is just incredible. And we can't forget the popcorn-pooping space slug.
Right.
Or the fact that young actress Eva Ridley, who plays Kara's sidekick, Ruthie, she had to eat about 40 fried alien eyeballs on set.
40 of them.
Yeah. because the prop department actually made them out of fondant icing and cake, so she could physically consume them take after take.
And, those quirky details serve a vital narrative function.
How so?
Well, when you build a tangible intergalactic convenience store, or you force an actor to interact with a physical animatronic dog, it makes Kara's galaxy feel lived in.
It feels real.
Right, it feels heavy with consequence. Contrast that with the weightless artificial blue screen environments that have made so many recent blockbusters feel, honestly, incredibly disposable.
I think about it like the difference between buying a sleek, mass-produced digital watch, that's your typical modern superhero movie,
Sure.
and a scuffed-up vintage mechanical watch where you can actually see all the brass gears kicking away inside.
That is a great analogy.
That's what the Supergirl movie felt like. It's a little messy, but it's completely authentic. You can feel the human touch in the machinery.
And that authenticity resonated deeply with the critics who praised the film. Millie Alcock receives universal acclaim for her emotional depth.
She was fantastic. She even learned fluent Kryptonian dialogue.
She did. She completely embodied that punk rock, traumatized energy, delivering a performance that truly anchored those practical sets she was walking through.
But despite all that tactile, grounded world building, the narrative structure itself began to show massive cracks.
Yeah, it did.
And those cracks started appearing the moment the studio mandated that a highly marketable character be injected directly into Kara's deeply personal story.
Enter Jason Momoa.
Enter Jason Momoa as the intergalactic bounty hunter, Lobo.
Lobo is, he's a huge fan favorite in DC lore. And Momoa's casting came with a highly publicized 15% presence mandate in the film.
Meaning he had to be on screen for a specific chunk of the runtime.
Exactly. And the costume department went all out. He wore the heaviest costume on set, complete with a massive leather coat, custom metal chains, and a functioning vape cigar.
Nice cigar.
Yeah, it literally illuminated his face with a neon glow every time he took a drag.
I mean, on paper, that sounds incredibly fun, but reviewers pointed out a massive tonal clash.
A huge clash.
Because the movie features a genuinely terrifying villain named Krem, played by Matthias Schoenaerts. And Krem pillages towns. He literally abducts young brides.
It's an incredibly dark, heavy thematic element.
Very heavy. And while Kara is supposed to be reckoning with this darkness, trying to protect a young girl from Krem's extreme violence, the movie keeps abruptly cutting away to Lobo doing goofy fan service antics with his space vape.
What's fascinating here is how this illustrates the core danger of building a cinematic universe.
Right.
A studio will often try to engineer a film to hit all four quadrants, meaning they want to tweak the movie so that men, women, audiences under 25, and audiences over 25 will all buy a ticket.
They want everyone.
Right. The problem is, when you force a four-quadrant fan service cameo into a singular thematic vision, the emotional core gets entirely diluted.
Just waters it down.
In a story about a grieving survivor protecting an innocent child, a wisecracking bounty hunter just pulls focus from the actual stakes.
But isn't it completely standard for shared universes to cross-pollinate characters like this? I mean, audiences loved it when Iron Man showed up to mentor Spider-Man or when the Hulk crashed into Thor's movie.
Truly did.
So why did injecting a massive charismatic star like Momoa actually hurt this specific film?
Because the crossover wasn't organic to the tone established by the director.
Yeah.
If you're building that vintage mechanical watch you mentioned earlier, you can't suddenly jam a digital microchip into the brass gears and expect it to keep time.
Oh, that makes sense.
The studio wanted the gritty, prestige character study Gillespie was directing, but they also demanded the highly marketable, toy-selling crossover event.
And that bizarre tonal whiplash you're describing, between a traumatic survivor story and a goofy bounty hunter, it wasn't an accident.
No, not at all.
It was the visible scar tissue of an all-out war happening in the editing room.
A literal tale of two cuts. The trade reports explicitly outlined vastly competing visions between the director, Greg Gillespie, and DC Studios leadership, specifically James Gunn.
It got so contentious that they actually spent the money to produce two entirely different final cuts of the film.
Which is incredibly rare.
You had one version edited by Gillespie's longtime collaborator, Tatiana S. Regal, and her cut featured a completely alternate opening and devoted a lot more screen time to Kara's backstory, exploring her trauma in depth.
Right, leaning into the character study.
Exactly. And then you had a second competing version edited by Fred Raskin. He's James Gunn's go-to editor from the Guardians of the Galaxy films.
And his cut pushed a much faster, action-heavy pace.
The studio executives were so deadlocked over the tone that they took both cuts to test audiences to let the metrics decide.
Test screenings are such a bizarre concept when you really think about it.
They really are. The studio basically recruits random people from a shopping mall, puts them in a theater, and gives them literal dials to turn up or down based on how much they like a specific scene.
That's exactly how it works. They synthesize all those dial turns and post-movie questionnaires into a numerical score.
Wow.
And in this case, the studio's cut, edited by Raskin, outperformed the director's cut by a mere 2 points.
2 points. I mean, that is essentially statistical noise.
Pretty much.
You could get a 2-point swing just because the air conditioning in the theater was too cold that day.
Absolutely.
Eh.
And yet, that microscopic margin of error gave the studio the justification to move forward with their version, aggressively blending elements late in the game.
Which never works out well.
No. It sparked immediate comparisons online to the infamous DCEU Justice League debacle from a decade ago.
Right, when a studio panicked, fired their director, and tried to stitch two completely different movies together.
Fans are already flooding social media, demanding a Gillespie cut.
It's like hiring a master architect to design a Gothic cathedral. But halfway through construction, the corporate board demands you bolt a neon drive-through window to the side of it because drive thrusts are trending.
That is exactly what it feels like.
Even if the original stonework is beautiful, the practical sets, Millie Alcock's acting, the gorgeous costumes, the final structure is going to look completely confused.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the tension between an auteur's unique vision and a studio's need for franchise uniformity is really the defining conflict of modern Hollywood.
Yeah, they want it both ways.
Studios hire these incredible indie directors specifically for their unique flavor, but then force them to adhere to a mandated house style. You cannot have it both ways, and Supergirl is the $200 million proof of that.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, though. The editing drama hurt the pacing, absolutely. But the ultimate betrayal, the thing that entirely flatlined the word of mouth for this movie, was a fundamental, baffling misunderstanding of the source material's ending.
Oh yeah, this is where the adaptation truly goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Screenwriter Anna Nogueira admitted in promotional interviews that she consciously changed the ending of the story.
Right. So in the film, Kara murders the villain, Krem.
Yes.
She does this to spare the young girl, Ruthie, the heavy psychological burden of taking a life.
Right.
Kara essentially sacrifices her own moral purity so the kid doesn't have to live with blood on her hands.
That was the logic on screen.
And Nogueira claimed she made this change because, and I quote, the original comic ended with Ruthie killing Krem anyway.
Right.
She thought a child committing murder was too dark for the movie, so she had Supergirl step in and do the killing instead.
But here's the critical, glaring error.
Tell me.
The comic does not end that way.
No.
Tom King, the author of the comic, who, by the way, is currently employed as a primary story architect for the entire new DC universe.
Literally on their payroll.
Yes. He explicitly confirmed that Ruthie does not kill Krem. In the book, she hits him with a cane, symbolically rejecting the cycle of revenge, and leaves him alive.
Wow.
The screenwriter entirely misread the core thematic resolution of the text she was adapting.
I just cannot wrap my head around this. How does a massive studio apparatus with dozens of producers and executives misinterpret the ending of a comic book?
It's wild.
Especially when the author of that comic is right there. Did she just fail basic reading comprehension, or is there a deeper Hollywood mechanism at play here?
Well, this raises an important question about studio mandates.
Yeah.
It's highly probable that executives looked at the original ending, realized that having a 12-year-old girl violently assault a man with a cane was pushing the boundaries of their PG-13 rating, and demanded a cleaner resolution.
Oh, that makes sense from a corporate perspective.
Right. But instead of finding a thematic compromise, the writer gave the kill to Supergirl, fundamentally breaking the character.
Exactly.
When you adapt literature, changing an ending isn't inherently bad. Filmmakers do it all the time to suit a visual medium.
Sure.
But changing an ending because you failed to comprehend the original text's message about mercy, that immediately alienates the core evangelists of your movie, the comic book fans.
And a deep dive into the Reddit threads proves just how alienated they felt.
Oh, they were furious.
Fans were absolutely outraged. We're obviously just reporting what they're saying here, but not only did they point out that making Kara a killer who feels emotionally satisfied by her lethal actions ruins her internal arc, but they pointed out that it actively breaks the geopolitical logic of the wider cinematic universe DC is trying to build.
It really is a massive continuity problem.
Right.
Because in shows like Creature Commandos and Peacemaker, the DC Universe established heavy political tension regarding unchecked metahumans acting as judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, it's a huge theme for them.
The whole point of the universe's current narrative arc is government paranoia about super beings killing people without due process.
So you can't just have Supergirl execute a guy in space and then never address it.
No, you can't.
It creates an international incident for Superman to deal with. Because they broke the internal logic of the universe, the comic fans refused to champion the movie, and positive word of mouth basically died on arrival.
Which leads directly to the financial carnage.
Yeah. Let's talk about those numbers.
The numbers are staggering. The film had a reported production budget of between $170 and $186 million.
And that doesn't even include the massive global marketing campaign.
Not at all. And it had a disastrous opening weekend of just $38 million.
$38 million. And then it suffered a catastrophic 76% drop in its second week.
People didn't just passively dislike it. They actively warned their friends to save their money.
Yeah, they were telling people to stay home. The global cumulative box office is sitting at roughly $124 million.
Meaning Warner Bros. Is looking at a net loss of up to $200 million.
Ouch. Which brings us back to why the studio pushed it to premium video on demand today, just 32 days after its theatrical release.
They are desperately trying to stop the bleeding.
Right.
When a movie plays in a theater, the studio splits the ticket revenue roughly 50-50 with the cinema.
Okay, so they only get half.
Exactly. But on premium video on demand, they keep about 80% of that $25 rental fee.
Oh, wow. So it's a much better margin.
It is a pure triage strategy to recoup losses in the home market.
We read a really insightful piece from The Guardian that asked a pretty brutal industry-shifting question.
Yeah, about minor characters.
Right. Does this massive flop signal the end of the minor character superhero movie? Think back to the early days of the MCU. Audiences would enthusiastically show up for a talking raccoon or a guy who shrinks to the size of an ant just because it had the Marvel logo attached.
They trusted the brand.
They did. But today, audiences are outright ignoring characters like Blue Beetle, Madam Web, the Eternals, and now Supergirl.
And because of this rejection, DC is being forced to retreat to their guaranteed major icons.
Back to basics.
Yeah, they're relying heavily on the upcoming Superman. Man of Tomorrow, where, we should note, Millie Alcock is surprisingly still slated to reprise her role as Supergirl alongside David Corenswet.
Which is interesting given how the solo outing went.
Very. And they're also relying on the upcoming Batman film, The Brave and the Bold.
But wait, this makes me look at the entire architecture of these franchises differently.
How so?
We used to think of cinematic universes like massive interconnected power grids. Every movie, no matter how small the character, was a substation generating narrative power for the next big Justice League crossover.
That was the model, yeah.
But if audiences are just ignoring the smaller substations now, does the whole grid go dark? Like, can a universe survive if we only care about Batman and Superman?
Well, audiences have simply become incredibly savvy. They no longer accept stepping stone movies that exist solely to set up future sequels.
Right.
A film must stand entirely on its own merits. Supergirl, despite its beautiful tactile practical effects and a genuinely great lead performance, was just too burdened by franchise expectations.
And the studio interference.
And clumsy fan service, yes. It was too burdened to stand alone. The power grid doesn't necessarily fail completely, but the studios are realizing they can no longer build it as wide or as expansive as they used to.
It's really the tragic irony of Supergirl. Here is a film that went to the ends of the earth to build a stunning, tangible universe.
They physically built alien bars.
They made fondant eyeballs and popcorn-pooping slugs. They hired incredible actors, only to tear the whole thing down with studio meddling, a forced cameo from Jason Momoa, and a fundamentally botched script adaptation that didn't even understand its own source material's ending.
It's a shame.
So what does this all mean? For you listening right now, it's worth reflecting on your own viewing habits. Do you still feel that undeniable urge to rush out and see every single superhero movie on opening night? Or have you felt this exact fatigue?
That feeling of just being a cog in their machine.
Exactly. The feeling that you're being sold a tiny puzzle piece rather than a complete, satisfying movie experience?
And I want to leave you with a final thought on that, specifically building on this VOD release strategy we discussed.
Okay, lay it on us.
By consistently dumping these underperforming $200 million blockbusters onto digital platforms just 30 days after release, our studios actively training audiences to skip theaters entirely.
Oh, wow.
In trying to soften the immediate financial blow of Supergirl, DC might actually be programming you, the viewer, to never buy a movie ticket for their next universe-building film again.
Because why would you?
Right. If you know it's going to be in your living room in a month, why rush out to the theater?
That is a chilling thought for the future of movie theaters. We'll leave you to chew on that one. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the media you consume. Keep looking for the mechanical gears behind the digital screen, and we'll catch you on the next one.